place that. My name is Emerita Balfour, Curator of National Museum West. My team and I are very pleased to have you all here for our annual celebratory event for Heritage Month.
Only half of your face showing, Sharifa. Okay.
Okay. All right. Apologies.
Up some more.
I'm not sure. All right.
That's
apologies.
It. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right. So my team and I, we're very pleased to have you all here for our annual celebratory event for Heritage Month. For Heritage Month 2020, we are celebrating under the theme, Celebrating a Heritage of Resilience and Pride. As a museum curator and coordinator of this event, I believe that there are very few things that illustrate the resilience of Jamaican people better than our language. With this thought in mind, Chattings of Conversation on Jamaican Patois was born. The aim of this discussion is trifold. Firstly, we hope that we are able to demystify or correct the incorrect notion that Patois is not a language. Secondly, we hope to shed new light on the topic as we explore its origins and use, as well as how it is perceived in today's society. Thirdly, we hope that this conversation will not only rehash our thoughts and point of views, but rather advance various views on the topic and come to a space of mutual understanding. At this time, I'd like to extend a special welcome to our panelists, Professor Emerita Carolyn Cooper, Mr. Owen Blakka Ellis, Mr. Rushaine Dutty Berry, and Dr. Joseph Farquharson. Please also allow me to introduce our moderator for today's event, Dr. Patrick Prendergast. So Dr. Prendergast, PhD, is Campus Director of the University of the West Indies Mona Western Jamaican Campus in Montego Bay. He is also a lecturer in development communication at the Caribbean School of Media and Communication. He holds a doctorate in community communication from the University of Amsterdam and undergraduate and graduate degrees in television production, social marketing, and social and behavioral change communication from the University of the West Indies Mona Campus. Dr. Prendergast has wide-ranging multi-level experience in teaching curriculum development, cultural and creative arts, and educational administration, as well as program planning, project management, and environmental education and communication. He is an internationally recognized communication for development specialist, with a focus in community media and rural development, sustainable development, and issues of Caribbean masculinities. He has held consultancies with intergovernmental agencies, Commonwealth of Learning, UNESCO, and PAHO, and professional memberships in the International Association for Media and Communication Research, the World Association of Community Radio Broadcasters, and the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communication. So I just want to say thanks to everyone for being here, and we are ready to go.
Thank you very much, Madam Curator, Ms. Sharifa Balfour. I thought we had sent you the 50-word brief. But anyway, that's how it is. Today's topic is always relevant, always timely, and of course, always current. No matter how often we discuss the issue of attitudes towards the Jamaican language, it seems we will always have need for some kind of chat, whether that chat is open and upfront as we're now doing with this public forum, or if it takes place, just among a small group of friends on a veranda, where it probably would be better described as veranda talk, because we know that some people would say people with patio don't chat. They have intellectual and philosophical discourse about the social and economic ramifications of elevating a nondescript to a position of importance, and the negative consequences of such an elevation, what that would have on the respect and global standing of our country. But as we always say, them can chat as much as them want chat. We know what we're talking about. So, welcome everyone to Chattings, a conversation on Jamaican Patois. And as I mentioned before, my name is Patrick Prendergast, and I will be your guide for this morning's event, which is being hosted by the National Museum West. And as I always say about my own campus, the UWI Mona Western Jamaica Campus. National Museum West is located in the city of Montego Bay, not the second city, the city of Montego Bay, the city of resistance and revolt, the city of resilience and overcoming, the city of bold. So no matter what negatives this city throws up or are thrown against it, one of the things that I've learned to appreciate is that Montego Bay is in fact the city of resilience. So today, well, just we're still in the heritage period, and the you know the theme within which we're having this discussion is in the context of celebrating our heritage. And just last week, the municipality honored 15 members of the parish for their service. And 8 of them received the Mayor's Special Awards, and 7 received the Sam Sharp Award. And as you may well know, Sam Sharp to me is not only a leader of the pre-emancipation resistance movement, but a fitting symbol of the post-emancipation resilience. So in today's discussion, we're going to set the historical background to development of the language that is constantly fighting to be recognized, not just us fighting, the language fighting to be recognized. And basically just to see how we may want to align that kind of tension to the history of resistance, emancipation, and resilience. How do we align that with the linguistic development of the Jamaican Patois? We'll also examine the cultural meanings and values of Patois and explore some of the practical. And since I know we have Professor Carolyn Cooper, I have to say, and some of the philosophical groundings upon which of some of this, Jamaican mother tongue is a symbol of resilience, and how the language of identity is utilized for public education in popular media, generally across the many persuasive formats available for reaching our people. And lest we believe that this is a discussion to be left on the scrap heap of history, we will hear how the contemporary social media space and age, and how one's ability to really cut through a lot of the clutter of content out there and still hold your own, as we have seen in terms of presenting one's capacity to be meaningful and engaging and creating new ideas and thoughts through the creative management of languages, and especially the uniquely dynamic, what I love to call dynamic color and cadence and variations of the Jamaican Patois. So I've said a lot, and that is probably the most I will say, because this is really a conversation, chattings, and we have esteemed people, as Sharifa mentioned, to take us through this. Each member of this power panel, pulled together by the team at the National Museum West, comes to us with a body of knowledge and expertise that varies in experience, focus, and practice. But all 4 are engaging speakers, and I would want to see this exercise as a critical part in the enlightenment and, by extension, empowerment of our society. You've heard already, we have the extremely popular young cultural and entertainment commentator, Mr. Rushaine Berry. Is it Rushaine or Rushaine? Rushaine Berry, Dutty Berry for most of you. And of course, there is actor, writer, and educator, my good friend Owen Blakka Ellis, as well as one of the queens of rebel, the public intellectual, UWI Professor Emerita Carolyn Cooper, and Dr. Joseph Farquharson. I should put in the T, Joseph T Falcon, who will kick off today's presentations, really setting the historical and linguistic context of Patois. So I just want to let you know, those of us who are participating online, that you can pose your questions, pose your comments as we go along, and somebody will ensure that we get a chance to share those with our esteemed panelists. So let me introduce our first person to kick us off. Joseph T Farquharson, PhD, is a tenured senior lecturer in the Department of Language, Linguistics, and Philosophy, and Deputy Dean for Graduate Studies and Research for the Faculty of Humanities and Education at UWI Mona. He was formerly a visiting researcher and adjunct lecturer in the English Department of the Albert Ludwig Universität Freiburg. You see, I have to learn to play on these things, and I probably it's a Freiburg, but not to joke around. He was previously a postdoctoral research fellow at the Center for Inter-American Studies at the University of Belfield from 2013 to 15, and since August 2013, he has been an honorary research fellow in the Department of Modern Languages and Linguistics at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, where he previously served as lecturer in linguistics. He has also lectured at the University of Technology, Jamaica, and the University of the West Indies, Mona. From 2005 to 2008, he held a doctoral fellowship at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology. In 2008, he was the recipient of the Rex Netterford Fellowship in Cultural Studies. Joseph is the founder and coordinator of the Jamaican Lexicography Project, JAMLEX, and chief editor of the Jamaican National Dictionary. I can tell you that he's also strong on curriculum development. I've listened to him in making presentations, and I know we're in for a very, very exciting opening to our chatting this morning. Dr. Joseph T. Farquharson.
All right, thanks, Dr. Prendergast. You hearing me?
Loud and clear.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, good. So Dr. Prendergast, you see a focus span the Freiburg and mash up the people in Universität. You see the A have 2 dots over it.
Aha.
They pronounce like, it's pronounced A. All right, thanks much. And it's good to be a part of such a distinguished panel. I like the panel. It's a good range, and it allows us to, I don't want to say to attack, but to address the issue from varying perspectives. And even without hearing what my fellow panelists have to say, I already like the angles that I'm seeing based on the people who have been selected. So thanks to National Museum West, from the best city in the whole wide world, Montego Bay. Anyway, so the history of Jamaican Creole, and I'm saying Jamaican Creole because that's what linguists call it. Most people call it Patois. Linguists have been changing though over the past 20 or so years. And we have been dropping the Creole and just referring to the language as Jamaican. So we used to call it Jamaican Patois. Now we're saying Jamaican. And why we are proposing Jamaican is because it is the language that identifies people as being Jamaican. So when you go foreign and you book up on people, nobody asks you if you talk English, and then asks you in English, you know, where you talk or where you come from, they might ask you in a patois, yeah? So it's a language that identifies us whether at home or abroad. And just like the English people, their language is English, the Spanish people, their language is Spanish, French, etc. The language of the Jamaican people is Jamaican. And that no means that we not talk English. It just means that it is the language that sets us apart from everybody else. So a little on the history. We all know that Jamaica was held by the Spanish until 1655, when the English, because they had failed at capturing Hispaniola, decided to just go up the road and try them hands at Jamaica. And they found that the small settlement that the Spanish had in Jamaica wasn't able to keep them out. And so they captured the island for England. That, of course, changed all of history, not just because England became a world power, but it was capturing an island that in its own right, several centuries afterwards, would become a world power culturally. In the 1600s, the Jamaican population was very volatile, people coming from everywhere. In terms of Europeans, chiefly from the Eastern Caribbean and Suriname. So colonies had been set up by England in places like Barbados, places like St. Kitts and Nevis, Suriname, etc. And those people started coming over because Jamaica represented a place with large unexplored territory and a lot of flat farmable land. And that is what they were looking for. And so the English crown was practically giving away land in Jamaica for people to come over, and they brought people from Ireland. And a lot of those people were actually, those coming from Ireland, etc., were prisoners of war. I tell people these days that for a very long time, the foreign policy of the British government was to send their bad behaving people to other people's places. And so a lot of those people, the Irish who came over, were prisoners of war, serving out sentences, given a chance at a new start. And they set up plantations in Jamaica. Now, most linguists believe that the people coming from Barbados came not only with English, but the enslaved Africans they brought with them brought some sort of inter-ethnic communication variety that they had started developing in Barbados, in Suriname. And the proof of that is that there are quite a few words that are shared between us and Barbados and Suriname, etc. At least 12 words that come from Africa can be found over and over in English Creoles of this region. And it's thought that is because they started out in Barbados. Now, after that, in the 1700s, etc., Africans kept on coming in, and the language developed more, became solidified, until in about the 1750s, thereabout, we are getting reports that not only enslaved Africans are using the language, but white people born in the country. So by then, it has become the native language of people born in Jamaica. And so there is an 18th century account where this foreigner stays with a white family, and he hears the little white boy saying, "Me no want a man crab, me want a woman crab." And that tells us that white people were talking Jamaican. It was a language of both whites and blacks, and has been so up to today. And what that also tells us is that the sort of stigma attached to the language today is something that is fairly recent and is linked to a kind of backlash against the growing influence of Black people in Jamaica and the symbols and cultural artifacts and phenomena associated with the Black majority in Jamaica. But when Black people didn't seem to be a threat, it was very easy for whites in Jamaica to kind of move across the borders. So we get the Jamaican as a native language of all Jamaicans of all races. In the 19th century, after emancipation, the British government brought in people from Africa again, mainly from Central Africa, West Central Africa, and they brought in Chinese and Indians in order to help to do the work that was left when Africans fled the plantations and set up communities in the mountain regions. And that added to the wealth of the language. So we get games like pick-a-pow from the Chinese, we get curry, and we get ganja from the Indians. Them never come from Africa. And so all of those added to the language, especially to the vocabulary. And later on, in the 19th century, early 19th century, we have Jamaicans moving. Well, in fact, they had been moving since about the middle of the 19th century. But from there until the 20th century, we get a lot of movement outward as Jamaicans start looking for labor, and they end up in places like Costa Rica, in Cuba, in England in the middle of the 20th century. And they now start creating new varieties of the language in their new spaces. And that is something we can have a conversation about later on. But that's the basic history in a nutshell, with some things left out, but I leave space for the other panelists to make their introductions.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Farquharson. We note the evolution of the referencing, as you call it, the linguists being disruptive in terms of referencing the language from Jamaican Creole, Jamaican Patois to Jamaican as that language that truly identifies us as well, us now, the Jamaican people. I too like to say that history is very important for us in terms of setting, getting a better understanding of how things evolve. And I think this is probably the very first time that I'm hearing this, identifying with you this point at which the Jamaican language emerged as part of our lived experience. You're born and live in Jamaica. You're at some point, all of us who born and live in this space begin to speak that which is, the Jamaican language. I'm really fascinated by that bit of history there. And I want to also thank you for making the link between the coming of other peoples, not just the Africans and the Europeans in our case, because we tend to limit the discussion to English and the African, but in terms of how the coming of other peoples from Eastern Asia, Southern Asia, the Middle East, and so on would have influenced the way our language evolved and developed. So thank you very much for that. And as we go on in the morning with the chattings, I have a few more questions that I may want to put to you, and hopefully we'll get from the audience as well. All right, so let's then move to another of my good friend and colleague, the Rebel I said. So we know a lot about what's happening. We talk a lot about the University of the West Indies and the work that they're doing. Dr. Farquharson would talk a little about that as well. In fact, we could be considered, one of the leading leaders in terms of advocacy for the Jamaican Patois to be brought into the official fold of languages. We've heard a lot, about the work of, as well, Professor Devonish and others in the Jamaican language unit. And then, of course, you have, those like our next speaker who really go out there, put themselves on the line to demonstrate what it means to walk the talk. But Professor Carolyn Cooper for me goes a little bit beyond the walk. What she does is really to find interesting ways to encourage us to read the talk. And as we all know, she's a regular columnist, contributed to the Gleaner. And so let me just do the formal introduction and get straight to Professor Carolyn Cooper. Carolyn is a public intellectual committed to widening debates on cultural politics beyond the walls of the university. She's a well-respected analyst of current affairs in Jamaica and is regularly consulted for radio and television programs. She writes a weekly column for the Jamaica Sunday Gleaner, and once a month, she writes in the Jamaican language, generating widespread contention about the appropriateness of using the vernacular in formal media. And as I said before, the rebel in her will not make her cease, despite all the chatter. She has appeared on several documentaries in several documentaries on Jamaican culture for a wide range of media houses, locally and internationally, including Al Jazeera, NPR, National Public Radio in the US, and of course the BBC. Professor Cooper is the author of 2 influential books, Sound Clash, Jamaican Dancehall Culture at Large, 2004, and Noises in the Blood, Orality, Gender, and the Vulgar Body of Jamaican Popular Culture, 1993. She is the editor of the award-winning collection of essays, Global Reggae, which came out in 2012. 7 years ago, in 2013, Professor Cooper was awarded a national honor. And as we say, we're in the season of celebrating our heroes. And that national honor, the Order of Distinction Commander Class. So we really should be saying, Professor, let's now hear from Professor Carolyn Cooper, OD.
CD. It's a pleasure. Yes, thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure for me to participate in this important chattings. And, you know, you mentioned the fact that I write a column for the Gleaner, and that's the space in which I've done what I call my activism in support of the linguists. Because, you know, the linguists are very serious scholars and they don't get themselves often mixed up in public wranglings. Joseph is a different kind of linguist, you know, he's a underground linguist. But like Professor Devonish, too, who is a very important part of this conversation, we have to acknowledge him again. You know, I have felt that we need to move from the academy out to the street, because if we keep on having the discussions among ourselves in the university, we're not going to reach the people who really matter, the people on the ground who are speaking the language, who know it is important, but who are often dissed by the elites in the society. So when first I started to write for the Observer, you know, in the 90s, I wrote a column for the Observer for 5 years. And it was a constant battering because that column was even more pro-Jamaican than the current one I write for the Gleaner, which is just once a month. When I was writing for the Observer, it was a bilingual column, 1 week in English, 1 week in Jamaican. And the amount of cussing I got, not even just from the readers, you know, I got a lot of abuse even from the Observer management, because they would say things like, you write so well in English, why you can't just write mostly in English and then every now and then in Jamaican? And I used to tell them, the English column is married to the Jamaican column. So if you don't want Jamaican, you can't get the English. You know, when you go to the market and things are scarce and people marry products, okay, if you want this, you have to take something you don't want. So it was a constant fight. And then one of the things that amazed me when I used to write for the Observer is that people would insist that I'm writing in Patois. They completely disregarded the columns that were being written in English. And one day I said to Hubert, I said, but Hubert, I really don't understand this. I'm writing in 2 languages and people just insist that I'm writing only in Jamaica. They don't see the English at all. So they keep pushing you that you're against English and you're only for Jamaican. And Hubert looked at me with a good laugh. He said to me, look here, writing in English is like wearing clothes. That's the norm. When you write in Patois, it's like you're going out naked. So I wrote a column called UWI Lecturer Exposes Herself in Public, based on that comment by Hubert. But he was making a very good point. Writing in English is normative. So that is what you do. So when you start to write in Jamaica now, you upset people. I remember once I was on campus and I heard some students chatting under the tree. They were talking about language. Because my middle name is Fast. We go over there, go fast with them. And I made a mistake of telling them that Jamaican has grammar. Me hear them get so vexed. Miss, we don't want to hear nothing about grammar and Jamaican or Patois, because they associate grammar with the stress of learning English. And for them, Jamaican is a language in which they are free. They don't hear nothing about grammar, because grammar now suggests restriction, boundaries, and all of that. And I said to them, but no, man, all grammar means is the structure of the language. If Jamaican didn't have any grammar, we wouldn't keep on making the same kind of sentences over and over again in the language. And I say, if you want to hear ungrammatical Jamaican, just listen to a foreigner trying to speak the language. And when you hear the foolishness that them say, you know that they have not mastered the grammar of the language. So that is the first thing, that, you know, we don't want to have any work associated with the language. And I think this is one of the reasons why people are so resistant to the writing of the language, because now them have to go learn writing system, and them have to go take this thing serious, and them have to go butter with the language, and you know, they don't want to be literate in the language. And I'm amazed at the people who write and they just can't read this foolishness. And they don't see it as a challenge to enjoy their language, to extend their knowledge, to, you know, learn something new. All them say is botheration. And I'm saying, how can you take so much pride in ignorance? You know, they don't even try. And the joke about it is young people are literate in Jamaica. You just have to go on the internet. It's people sending around jokes, all kinds of things written in Jamaican. No, it is true that those, you know, on the internet, in this informal space, people just use whatever system they feel like that will make themselves understood. And they're not necessarily interested in learning the formal system that was developed by the linguist Frederick Cassidy, Jamaican linguist, and has been slightly modified by the Jamaican language unit at the University of West Indies. So they just write the language and they have fun writing their language, because as Joseph said, the language is a way you define your identity as a Jamaican. One of the big jokes is when these uptown Jamaicans send them children to foreign to go to university because UWI not good enough for them. But they don't realize that when they go to foreign, is graduate students teaching them. They're not getting no big name professors teaching them. The big name professors teaching them at UWI. And there was a student who was waiting to get into an American university and came on campus for a semester, sat in one of my classes. When she reached foreign, she emailed me, she said, Miss, I'm doing Caribbean studies, and all of the books I'm studying are written by the people that I leave at UWI, you know? So anyhow, they send the children to foreign. And one of the things that the children do is to start speaking Jamaican as a way of marking their identity as different from the people in the spaces that they occupy. So when they come home on holidays and chat bad, the parents cannot understand how them spend so much money to send them to foreign for come back for chat so bad. But they don't understand the Jamaican language as a marker of identity. And so writing this column now, one of the issues I've had is people just, you know, they don't want to take on the formal system. So as a compromise, I write in two systems. I write what I call chaka chaka, which is based on the English writing system. And everybody knows that English is completely irregular. The same spelling has a different pronunciation. And part of the reason for that is that the English language has evolved in terms of the pronunciation of words, but the spelling system is very conservative. So you have words being spelled the way they used to be pronounced. They're no longer pronounced like that, but you still have, you know, the spelling. With the proper system now that is developed by the linguists, every symbol represents the same sound all the time. And I keep telling people, you know, if you look at the proper, which what I call the proper is not the linguistics term. I'm sure the linguists are mad with me for coming up with this chaka chaka and proper something. But to me, it makes sense. Chaka chaka is a Jamaican word meaning disorderly and irregular. And that is what the English writing system is. And my Jamaican writing system designed to catch people who understand English spelling is done in that way. To sort of, many times I leave the word exactly as it would be in English, because I know as people are reading, they will pronounce it in the Jamaican way. And I tell them the proper now, if you read that out loud, it is so easy because the same sound with the same symbol all the time. So it's been a battle in the 90s with the Observer, and now with the Gleaner. In fact, I fell out with the Gleaner because, and you know, I don't care if them vex because I tell the story, but it's the truth. Somebody had quarreled about how I'm writing in this patois and I'm saying it's a language. So from now on, he's not going to read any more of my columns written in English. I must write all my columns in Jamaica. This is nothing but sarcasm. So I wrote a column, and towards the end now, I said, let me put in 2 little paragraphs in Jamaican, just in case him couldn't resist reading the English and he was reading it. So I put in these 2 paragraphs. Right? Would you believe the Gleaner editor said him not publishing the column because the 2 columns in Jamaica? But I said, but the whole point of that is to illustrate the larger issue of the whole column. So I have to have it in Jamaica. So I said, you either publish it or you don't publish it. So I never published it. So I never said no more column to give them for about 3 months. Everywhere we go up on the road, people ask me warm to the comments, I go ask the Gleaner. Anyhow, soon after, you had that ad. You remember the VW ad with the fellow from the Midwest talking in Jamaica? So I emailed the editor and I said to him, imagine VW can be using our language for sell for them car, and me in Jamaica can use our language in a column in the Gleaner. And that is how me and them make up back, we agree back. And at that point now, them end up in trouble because whereas I was just dropping in a little Jamaican here and there, I stick out and I say, I want to write a whole column once a month in Jamaica. I never carry them as far as the Observer with every other week because I know them couldn't manage the stress. So I say 1 column a week, 1 column per month in Jamaican. And that's how we arrived at this position. And so my contribution to this conversation is to say, let us continue to big up our language, but let us try to become literate in the language. And I blame the Ministry of Education for failing to take the language seriously. They allow the language to be used, but purely orally in primary schools. What they need to do is teach the children to be literate in their mother tongue, so that I wouldn't have this whole heap of harassment once a month with people abusing me, because they would learn the way to write the language. It will be part of just the normal education. But you have a set of people who believe that your head is like a coconut. If you fill it up with English, it's okay. If you fill it up with patois, there is no space for anything else. So this is the idea that your mind is a finite space. So you can only have one language. And if it's only one language you're going to have, it has to be English because it's a global language. We need to recognize that every Jamaican child has a capacity to be multilingual. And that is what we should aim for in the educational system, as some see it.
As such a seat and as such a geet. Why, Prof, me just happy for know that you stand up to the name, the title of being fast. Because if you're never so fast, you know, if you take on the moderation for the rest of us. A lot of the differences between the chaka and the proper would have missed with.
Yes.
So I really appreciate that, and as usual, you know, really advancing the discussion. I hope we can talk more a little later about, you know, what you said in terms of the English being the normative while writing in Jamaican is the disruptive way of doing things. But thanks for reinforcing that we have a language that actually has grammar and structure. And of course, we have to aim to develop our full capacity in being multilingual, because we do have the capacity to be multilingual. We've seen it work in other places, so there is no reason why we can't push for it to happen here. So thank you so very much. We're going to have our third presenter, and I like how they're keeping within the time so we can have enough time for chatting some more. Our third presenter is Owen Blakka Ellis. A lot of people just call him Blaca. As my good friend, I know him from such a long time. I call him by his original name, Blaca. But Blaca is a writer, educator, performing artist, and scholar, and is known mostly for his over 3 decades of work as a leading comedian. Well, what he prefers to call it the leading comedic entertainer, working either as a solo act or as the part of the famed Bello and Blaca duo. He has worked all over the world, not only as an actor, musician, and comedian, but also as a motivational speaker and workshop facilitator. He has written scripts for stage, screen, and television, published 2 books of poetry, and taught in several schools and colleges, both in Jamaica and Canada. And I'm so happy that he's now a PhD candidate in cultural studies at UWI. He recently got his master's degree in environmental studies from York University in Canada, where his focus, his scholarly work was on the intersection of issues related to gender, culture, and environment. Owen Blakka Ellis.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, National Museum West, for this wonderful opportunity to blend 2 very important elements of where we go to for cultural memory and for enlightenment and who we are and what we are. You know, one of the big name theorists in cultural studies, Clifford Geertz, define culture as the web of stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And I'm glad that we're getting a chance to share some of these stories here. And I'm very pleased and proud to be among this august gathering of people. You know, Dr. Farquharson, who I met first on Facebook, I'm seeing him face to face now, and Carolyn Cooper, Professor Cooper, just share the bars. So big up, enough respect. And Dutty Berry is a good youth because him got Excelsior like me. So yeah, I like it. But it's interesting because I think Dr. Farquharson and Carolyn Cooper, Professor Cooper, Professor Cooper, not so much because she intersects both what I want to call the archive and the repertoire. And there's a cultural studies scholar named Diana Taylor who makes a strong point about our balance and value the archive and the repertoire. And I think myself and Dutty Berry represent the repertoire, performance, and I'm glad that National Museum West has put I'm seeing a value on the repertoire by bringing into the conversation performers, because performance really is a vital act, a vital form of transfer of retention, of memory, of cultural knowledge and history and about ourselves as other people. And I'm sure that the ad that Professor Cooper referred to, the VW ad, the people who did that ad didn't go to the archive and library to learn how Jamaicans talk. They picked that up from hearing Jamaican performances, from hearing Jamaican musicians, Jamaican comedians, Jamaican dub poets speak the language. So in the repertoire performances, we have a very rich space, a very rich place of transfer of info, of knowledge, of understanding of who we are and what we are. That makes a strong point for the value of our language. I wanted a show in Negril some years ago, myself and IT and Fancy Cat, and we discovered upon arrival that it was really an audience of expatriates, an audience of tourists. And I was like, okay, now, IT and Fancy Cat not gonna work. Because IT and Fancy Cat content sometimes don't transfer so well to non-Jamaican audiences. But what was fascinating for that show was that Fancy Cat go there and talk, and all happened was that Fancy Cat talk and IT translate, and they were having a ball. The fun and humor was in them understanding that what Fancy Cat just said that sound colorful and dramatic and musical is just this in English. And it was for me a fun idea, and it's something I've used a lot in overseas performances. Thank the people, giving people a good sense of how our colorful language makes some boring things sound much more interesting. You know, the Americans would say Ghostbuster, we say Duppy Conqueror. And when they would say Firefly, we say Peony Wally. And when they would say small but mighty, we say little but Talawa. And just to hear the color and drama and beauty in that gives them a sense of why we are so other people, dynamic and creative and powerful. So it's important that we put value on performance, put value on the repertoire as where we can go to learn more about ourselves. Not saying we're going to completely dismiss the archive, but it's to see them working in tandem, archive and repertoire, and for us to pull from both so that we can enrich generations to come. I went to Trenchtown Primary School as a youth, right, in the ghetto, in the garrison, where them called Trenchtown. And the name Blaca, for example, which I called I Blaca when I embraced Rastafari in my young days, began in grade 3. We were learning about, and we were in grade 3 being bombarded with adjectives, comparatives, superlatives, big adjective, bigger, comparative, bigger superlative. And teacher, after giving us the lesson in that, asked for some examples. And one boy said, oh, miss, we black and in Blaca. And that became my name. And that is just an example of how other people were so creative with how we absorb and transmit what we understand. And if we can just validate that some more, I really want to echo what Professor Cooper said about having people from primary school begin to learn how to write the language, so that we can, when Dutty Berry digitize it and me perform it, they can document it in a literary form. Because don't worry, they already retain it. Because in the archive, in the repertoire, in the human archive, which is the repertoire performance, we learn and we absorb and we retain these things, and it gives us a very colorful stage from which to comment on the people who would seek to oppress us. And in the continuing project of decolonization, it becomes very, very important. It becomes vital. So, and what we do with the language as comedians, as dub poets, as speakers, as musicians, is exactly what our forebears did with forms like Jankuno and Brookings, is to mock the pomp and pretentious formality of Eurocentric performances and make our own thing out of it. So I'm saying it's a great opportunity we have here, and I want to open the convo to people to say, let's talk about how we take bad things, make laugh, and take fancy things, make informality, the way we access things and make them our own, make them more usable, user-friendly and accessible for our ears, for our hearts, and for our spirit, is what we do with the language. And therefore it should be valued, it should be encouraged, it should be formalized and structured in how we teach children. Every time people will start the Patois English argument in Jamaica, I get very frustrated and angry people who somehow misunderstand the thing as if we're going to try and teach children Patois. We don't have to teach them that. They know it a long time. It's to use what they know to teach them what we want them to learn. You know, I had an experiment when I taught English language and lit in high schools in the mid-80s at a school in St. Anne, where I taught English lit. And they never want to read no book. They don't want to read about a Great Expectation and a Shakespeare and so on. But I had to use those books to teach them literary analysis. So what I did, I drew a fair tune that was a big tune in those days, a song by George Michael, Creole Whisper. I played the song and them, Ray! And I said, okay, what do you mean by guilty feet have got no rhythm? So I mean that, sir. And they began, so they were able to now literally analyze based on the fact that the song speak to them. So if we can use that, and of course, I was shut down because the principal said, complaints, Mr. Ellis class too loud. So I was shut down. But that experiment proves that if we start where people are, we can get them where we want to take them. So start with where they are, with the language. You know, use Miss Lou and Yesafari and Okonora and Mutabaruka in class in the same way how we use Great Expectations and how we use Shakespeare. So because in our performances, in our social network, in our community and in our home, we already have a repertoire from which we can draw. So balance the archive with the repertoire so people can go far. So I'm glad that Dr. Berry and me, who I think represent the repertoire, the performance, are being equalized up with the archive, the academia, like Prof. Cooper and Dr. Farquharson, that we can make that blender now to make things move forward. So bring the archive and repertoire and blend them and watch how we go far. That's all I say. We can talk some more later. Yeah.
Me perform in my column them too, you know. Nobody you want to perform. And in fact, I've been trying to do, read, what you call it, something when you talk? What you call it?
Blog.
A podcast.
Blog,
a podcast
yeah.
of the columns where I read it, because that is another level of meaning. So nobody take the repertoire for yourself alone. Me and the repertoire too.
Well, I think people about me a little wait.
This is the thing, because I mean, as Blaca said, balance the archive with the repertoire and see how we go far. And I think what we're seeing really is that I think it's a recognition that outside of, when we started, we're talking about laying the historical context in terms of the evolution, bringing the academic side to it. But a lot of us who are involved in this are also performers in our own right, and some of us who choose to be directors, let's say, are frustrated actors, and some of us who choose to be lecturers are also frustrated performers. But the important thing is that it's a nice kind of slide, in terms of the evolution and understanding that what we're bringing to the discussion really is a broader mix, a nice blend up of what the Jamaican language is about, what Jamaican as a language is about. So we're going to go into into a more contemporary representation of that repertoire, and go to our final panelist from one Excelsorian to another. Rushaine Berry came to fame as Dutty Berry, riding on the success wave. I love to say that, riding on the success wave that Tessan Chin brought to the US-based talent show, The Voice. His extremely comical commentary videos of Tessan's performances throughout the entire season was the standard bearer for entertainment commentary, as far as I'm concerned. It was just really just beautiful. Berry hails from Washington Boulevard, St. Andrew, and is a graduate of the UWI Mona with a degree in language, communications, and society, and is a past student, as we mentioned already, of Excelsior and Meadowbrook High School. I'm going to ask him sometime later to tell us the story about how it all started with his school bag and this dirty thing. But suffice it to say, this unconventional comedian has always had a passion for drama. But guess what? Like a lot of us who happened to be on the stage, was very shy. Berry explains, though, that his break came when he went to a party and got a little tipsy. He did a video, posted it on Facebook, declaring that he wanted to start his own show and that it was going to be called The Dutty Berry Show. And he was going to be big and famous. Surprisingly, his friends loved the video and encouraged him to pursue his dream. So we really thank his friends for the encouragement, because Berry is now a social media veteran boasting over 240,000 subscribers and more than 12 million views on YouTube alone. And what I love to call is sizable fan base. What do you think they're called? Burritos. The 2019 Prime Minister Youth Awardee for Arts and Entertainment is Mr. Rushaine Dutty Berry. Over to you, sir.
All right, thank you. I really like that I'm in a space. I like being around academics. I feel like, back in the days when I used to be a prefect and all my friends were like head boy and head girl and deputy head boy, and I was just a mere prefect. So I'm in nice company, so I like it. Yeah, good day, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Rushaine Berry, and let me just say this. I grew up I had to change my shirt because I realized my day on a shirt was just red and blue, more one hoodie. I mean, I said, why me I come and I talk about my Jamaicanness and I'm big and bright in American colors. So I just go, but I said, okay, I must put on a little black shirt, and I remember growing up and I watched a lot of Disney because parent I work hard, mother I work hard. So I was raised watching a lot of TV, just the TV, the microwave, because mother there work. And I'd be consuming a lot of the Nickelodeon, the PBS Kids, all of that. And so in terms of how I would speak and communicate, it would be, American English. And I remember, doing that, and it was pretty good because I remember when you go to, your mother workplace now, and it's like, the kitchen area and everybody have them kids grow on. I remember there was a child that was there that I guess was hungry and said something like, "Mommy, me want sit in the yam," And I remember the peers just like, "Oh my God," the other peers like, "Oh, could have never been my child. I cannot believe this." And the idea of mother turned to me and she's like, you see this, I don't want you coming at them place and I chat somebody, but I don't want you to talk them some stuff there. So I remember I was just like, oh, I'm very glad that, I'm speaking quote unquote American English. Then now, what I realized is that as you got older now, especially becoming a teenager, the idea that you are so Americanized now is not something that is seen as a strength. Then you can get open to ridicule now, because now it's just like that Jamaicanness and speaking Jamaican Creole gets tied into your own identity, and how people seeing you as somebody who is familiar with the culture and being able to link with them. And so that was problematic. So I remember being there now and I'd be talking to my friends and them just be like, yeah, I don't really want to, we know. And so I remember I started just examine everything. So when that happened, I started to just realize if you want to connect with people, and especially being at Excelsior, you get me? Went to Excelsior and I realized that most of the kids there from Mountain View and stuff, and me, even though, never grew up really rich or nothing like that, up on Boulevard, so things were a little bit different. I realized that if I wanted to really connect with these people and be able to share moments with them, I had to kind of stop my Americanness and kind of kill the English if I really want to be embraced by them as somebody who is a true Jamaican. So I remember that I started just listening a lot more music. I used to, follow up a lot of Sean Paul and everything. And that is really how I discovered my language. And what is even more interesting is that, I looked up, I started looking up to, Louis Bennett, and I'd be watching, old episodes of, what's that show with Oliver Samuels? I can't remember right now. I did, and so I started to realize, yes. And so Oliver at Large and stuff, and I started to recognize that, wait, I like this. I like the idea of this. And I remember even Owen Blakka Ellis, coming to my school, and I'd see people like that, and I'm like, boy, it must be nice to be one of these persons who can say, oh, I'm a past student of Excelsior, and Louis Bennett is actually one of the early students of Excelsior High. And I always disappointed and said I want to be a part of that culture, but I wasn't able to connect to people like that. Fast forward, how I got the name Dutty Berry. I remember, surname is Berry, and it was the Dutty bag. I'm a class, my school bag. At the time, everybody had John Sport or Joy Sport or something like that. I never had that. I had a company bag, those, they have a fundraiser or something like that. My mother say, yo, this is the bag. Say that the company logo, and that's what's on it. I never like it. So I always put it at the back of the class. I don't want to be seen with it because, high school, you want to feel like you're at. And I remember one day the lady who's cleaning, she took up the bag and she's just like, "Oh, for bag this." And she said, "Oh, for dirty bag this." And there was a girl, one mix-up girl at the back of the class, and she says "A berry dirty bag." And the woman said, "Dutty Berry," and everybody started to laugh, and then it became my name. So when I wanted to the idea of, after being tips and I wanted to start do my show, I said Rushaine Berry sounds a little bit too, I don't think the audience that I want, I don't think that would resonate with them. And so I was thinking and I was saying, what is it? And I remember I said, oh, I have this nickname. And it is a word oxymoron. I like things that are yin and yang. So when I thought about it, and I was like, Dutty, and then the burial kind of sound refined. It kind of worked because I feel like it kind of fit me a little, a little ray and a little knowledge, And so I liked it. And so I said I was going to work with it. In that process now, I realized that there are a lot of persons who they heard the words and they wouldn't like the name. They're like, why Dutty? You know, and white have to be kind of like that. And I realized I'm getting some negative attitudes, especially from older persons who I guess meant well didn't like the idea that it sounded so so vulgar. And when it actually took greater meaning to me is after, you know, looking back at the video that, you know, the great Louise Bennett did, the poem Dutty Tough, and she basically, you know, spoke about, you know, Dutty being an African word and it actually means the ground. And so me think it makes sense because, you know, I pride myself on being down to earth. And so I think everything is just like cohesive here. Now, moving from that now and understanding like the, you know, having a deeper understanding of the cultural value of Patois is just like me recognizing, I think, I can't remember his name now, but he spoke earlier about Jamaica being such a iconic space in terms of the culture that we export to the rest of the world. And me being, you know, brought up now, started to realize that it came at a time where I saw Sean Paul and Shaggy, and you had Wayne Wonder and a lot of these Jamaican artists having success in mainstream media, BET, MTV, and to me, and you just see like the Shabba, you had a little bit of Buju, and it was just like a wow moment because it was the first time I was just like, wait, Jamaican culture and the way that we speak, it actually has value, and I don't know why I only recognize the value because I saw American people like applauding us, but yeah, that's a different argument. And so it made me want to cling to the language more. When I had my first video, I said something that I've never said before, and I think it's because I tapped into a space that, you know, I felt like it was just kind of, you know, being fostered. I said box cover. Now, before that, Tessan video, I don't think I've ever said the word like box cover, but I don't know. It is when you get into this, that is the thing that I love with Patois. It becomes this expression, this freedom where you don't even realize that you tap into that space. It's like, it's almost spiritual. That there's this essence that you just know it to come from Nanya and Maroon, you know if it come from our Fupatom, and all of a sudden just like, you know, pass all the generations and reach your art and then through your mouth. And so I said box cover, and I've been doing all my videos saying that since. And I realized how people have just like, you know, it becomes this alarm, this signal to say like, here what, mix up or go on now, what are you ready for say? And that has become the way now where I'm just like, hey, I am actually continuing that sort of culture of spreading information, disseminating information in a way that people can understand, because a lot of people are not going to sit down and then read something with, you know, one word with like 15 different syllables in it. They want information to be presented in a way that they can understand, and how you tap into that space is by using Jamaican Creole, using the Patois. And so what happened, I did the Tessan videos, and I was able to like tie in things with, you know, different cultural moments, and people would listen. Even if they didn't watch the show, they will look at the videos now to kind of get the roundup. Moving from that now, I started something that is called the social media countdown, where it's basically talking about the trending topics. But what I then do now is basically make it look like a susme I give, even if it is something that's informative. So just like the other day, I was doing a review of like the Jamaican election, and I'd present the information in a sort of way using the Creole and see the impact that a lot of my peers, my generation, they're not sitting down to watch the 7 o'clock or the 8 o'clock local news or reading the newspaper, because, you know, attention span just all over the place. And so what they want now is just somebody be able to just break it down in a way where them can probably have a smile, but also walk away with some of the talking points. And that is what I do. And I think that is the value that that Patois has. It is being reflected in the memes that we create on social media, to either just laugh about something or to just like talk about things that are serious and when we're passionate. It's a major part of branding. Anybody who is a creator now, you have to tap into that space, because the audience, especially the local audience on YouTube, they are very much big fans of Jamaican Creole. They want the content in Jamaican Creole. I tried it once after getting some criticism about, and it was from a few people, and I took it to heart about, you know, why me have to talk Patois, why me have to do this and yeah. And so I said like, hey, you know, this idea that you go university, you got college, why you can't, you know, why you have to talk so much patois and all of this, and you're going like you don't understand what. So I changed up a bit, and I realized the views went down significantly in terms of the interest and how people would respond. It's like, how was I going to go and present mix up, quote unquote, and something that me consider like exciting and festive and have whole heap of buzz? How am I going to present this information now and basically say, you know, wow, golly gosh, the clock fell off the wall. It was such a sad moment for me. The minute I say, box cover, G's and P, when we look around, I saw the clock just go boof. You know, it's a different sort of reaction, and and that's like the value. And then also to move away from this sort of notion that there's this expectation that and I kind of feel bad sometimes that people value my patois, or they'll give me a pass because I'm a Creole, you know, speaker, because they have the understanding some come from a little bit of academia, you know. So it's just like, it's this pass like, but now I really pray as fully done because, you know, you have to look at UWI part there. So you just do it because you really have to do it, not because you can't do it better. So I'm more like, you know, so what about the speakers? You know, who basically they are, what you call it, fluent in just Jamaican Creole for the most part. And I think Blaca said something earlier about the idea in terms of, and Dr. Cooper spoke about it as well in terms of how we're educated. You know, me never understand this idea that we feel like, yo, Jamaican people just born and we just speak English. We're not natural English speakers. We don't come out of a womb and we're like, hey, hello world. We're not doing that. And we enter the school system and we are taught like that. You know, when we really understand English, I understood English when we start to learn foreign language, when we start to learn Spanish. In terms of them, I talk about the pronouns, them in the socials, all of them, because some of them used and everything, and French, is when we tie that back into English now, we realize, oh, so that's why the subject verb and agreement here makes sense. That's why everything tying together. But we were taught English from the lens of like, yo, we're just born and know English, when that is really not the case. And so in terms of the idea of now, you know, using, you know, Cassidy's system now to really learn English, not just from the, you know, the oral form, but like actually for the written word, and having that sort of system. I'm sure that, you know, Professor Definition, in your many studies that will actually show the value in terms of like how people can learn. I'll tell young people now that I have a disconnect learning like maths and whatever. And it is really because they're not being spoken to in such a way that is in their native tongue. So I think that's basically kind of it for me now. I think the online space in terms of young people, we are loving the use of Creole. I don't know if we value the written form as yet. I don't know, because we just have our own system. So we'll spell the words and like, oh, we want to spell it based on the spirit of Nani and Maroon, which leads us into that direction. But like, hopefully we'll get to a point that in the next 10, 15, you know, 20 years, reach a point where it would actually be something that is a part of the school system.
Can I just jump in, Patrick? Beg you jump in and I want to thank Dutty Berry for take the Oloman archive and put me in her repertoire with the greeting of Jamaica. Me tell you, when you put in going on for election day,
yes,
send that video around plenty. Big up, proud of you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I mean that's Rushaine, thank you so very much for your presentation. I mean, I just love it. You know, when you the way you describe the difficulty in expressing and sharing the excitement of blend up and all of that, and trying to bring it back into something that is not truly representative, not just in terms of your tongue, but also in terms of getting people to understand and to connect. You know. And you touched on something that I wanted to use as a kind of a opening up, so to speak, of this discussion. Starting with you, because you touched on it at the very end there in terms of, you know, what is happening in the space. And as I say, young people like you, you've come to appreciate this new space. Over the last 6 or 7 months, where we've kind of just normalized the use of the virtual world. People like me who are in media a long time don't see it as anything new. It's nothing. It's we're accustomed to broadcasting and recording and playing and whatever, right? But in this social media world, do you find that it is what is becoming the new normal? Do you think there is greater pressure on people like you as influencers to defend the use of the language, or do you now have greater leverage to promote the language?
I'm actually trying to just like wrap my head around that. I think I'm always like, defending the language just through my sort of art form. What I do think now, it is a space where there's a lot of noise in the world. There's a lot of noise in the world, and I find out like a lot of young people, as I said, especially with coronavirus and stuff, that they don't want to access the information in probably the traditional sense. And when you get into this space now where it is so headline driven, where people are learning things because people just don't want to read, period. So you'll have a headline and then you have the information in the description, and people don't bother want to do that. And so the challenge now is to really just like bring across information in such a way. So you have a certain things where people put one thing and then you put the information in front of them. And so I think as speakers now, it's for me and other persons like me to just find the things that I guess like the generation needs and try to present it to them in such a bold way in their own tongue. We saw it in the election campaigns because, in the same thing how they utilize the dubs and stuff like that. The language is a part of that. So when what's his name? Why am I forgetting the finance minister's name? Oh my gosh. Why am I losing it? Can somebody fill me in right now? Nigel, yes. Yes. And so Minister Nigel Clark. And so when he even mentioned about little bit of money, a lot of persons were drawn in just by that. So I saw that in the Twitter space, and people who weren't watching just realized that people were talking about Nigel Clark and the debate, and that there was a quote unquote politician who said little bit of money. And just that, people left from what they were doing and took to social media now to follow the debate so that they can be a part of this festive moment, and so that is how they were able to like draw into the debates now, because it became a performance. It became a performance now that they were like, oh, okay, all right, they must speak my language now. Let me see if I can hear any of these moments now. And while I'm doing this now, I guess I'll walk away with some of the informative bits.
Dr. Farquharson, I know you wanted to make a comment, so.
Yes, it's a bone me have to pick with Blaca. Because Blaca take me and Professor Cooper and put me in an archive.
Here.
And me think more mention the point because as something whole heap of people do when they come on to Patois. And this is how we view Patois, we view Jamaican as heritage. And I thought this was something that went out with Miss Lou. And Miss Lou, because at the time she started the struggle, she lived in a different period, a different sort of Jamaica, where she needed to take the inch in order to get the mile. And so her hook was to say, look, man, we need to preserve the culture. We need to think. But Jamaican is a living language. It's a living language with millions of speakers. And being a living language, it is ever changing. And so we don't want to preserve it. What we need to do is to develop it and use it to our own benefit, which is what speakers do to any language. And so it's just the discourse around preservation and archiving, because a lot of people who have now evolved, they have evolved too. And here I love Carolyn's point about yard clothes versus, you have gouting out clothes for some people versus yard clothes, where Patois for a lot of us, or Jamaican, is yard clothes. And when you go to put on something different. But this is an outward view that we take of our culture and of ourselves, that we keep on fixing up for other people. It's just like tourism, you know. It's just like tourism. If you go St. James, the places that tourists go, pretty up them, nice and pretty, because foreigner come, a foreigner need nice things, and it need to look good, and it need to stay good for them. But then when you go to the places where locals frequent, garbage non-collect, the road full of pothole, we keep on preparing things for outsiders as opposed to ourselves. So we must first become comfortable with what we have. Is it good enough for us? Mm-hmm. And if it is good enough for us, then it's supposed to be good enough for everybody else. And so it's taking it from that angle where the language is good enough for us, and because it is good enough for us, and really and truly, you know, a foreigner tell we say good enough, because right now, when I started out, I mentioned Jamaicans in the US, in Canada, in the UK, mm-hmm. and as they meet non-Jamaicans, it's Jamaican that those people want them to talk. Yeah. Nobody is interested. And it was a scholar, a Swiss scholar working in, an Austrian scholar working in Germany, who made me realize this, that as far as Jamaican English and the Jamaican language are concerned, outside of Jamaica, nobody is interested in Jamaican English. If they want to learn English, they go and learn American English, they go and learn British English. What people are interested in outside of Jamaica is the Jamaican language. And so you have thousands of people out there trying to learn the language. They're setting up WhatsApp groups, they're setting up internet forums, they're setting up Facebook groups. And so now there are groups on Facebook created by Ugandans, created by Ghanaians for learning the language. And so while we are busy preserving, they are busy developing and using the language. And we are missing out because there's a lot in there that needs to be tapped. And Dutty Berry talked about that. His views went down when he shifted. It means that there is a product, and I'm deliberately speaking in economic terms, because 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, and Professor Cooper knows, when you brought up the matter of Jamaica, people ask you, where that I go? That can't carry no way. People outside Jamaica can't understand we, how it going to make we better, you know, economically. That is not true now. That is not true. And Dutty Berry has seen that people want the product. So we have to find ways of not preserving, but packaging for distribution, and distribution that we can benefit from.
Yeah, I want to add quickly to that. While I was at university, before I did the test and videos, I was, you know, experimenting with a couple of YouTube videos, and you know, doing language and communication. I figured that I wanted to do a video, and so I had done a video at with a friend of mine from Carmack, and it was called like top 20 Jamaican slangs at the time. So the things like turn up the thing, you know, stuff like that. And that video, like, I was so shocked. I think I just like left it because I didn't really have a big following at the time. And I went away and came back, and the video got like just like over 100,000 plus something there, and views were climbing. And when I looked at the analytics, it wasn't Jamaicans. Like, when I looked at the analytics, the majority of viewers were from other countries. So you had like Asia, you had parts of Europe. I was just shocked because I was just like, I did not know that there was just this level of interest for people to just using, and I'm pretty sure they were using the videos like little mini lectures, because I gave the slang, and then I gave how to use it and what it means.
I'm going to jump back in and then shut up so the other people can.
Before you jump back in, Joseph, because I wanted to ask you something based on what you just said and Berry's and Rushaine's comment, following up on that, because I think in a way we're struggling. I think we're struggling more with understanding that the Jamaican is a language. And so there are some things that we ought to be looking for and putting out there so that, as Rushaine says, others are using the material to teach themselves. So there's as we mentioned earlier, there's grammar, there's structure and so on. Linguistically, we talk about what's supposed to happen. Is it that, or it could be that that is where we need to go to push more for an understanding of the language as language?
Yes, that's a part of it. And I have proven this in some of my own presentations. Because from time to time we invite high school students to come to campus and we will introduce them to linguistics. What is it? What do you do as a linguist? And see, Dutty is showing us one of the things you can do with linguistics. But what I find, even for people who believe that Jamaican is a language, and more people do now than a decade or two ago, that they believe Jamaican is a language, but there is no full understanding of what that means, because their introduction to this technical term language is in the context of learning English, where people give them a set of rules. You must do this, you mustn't do that. You can't say this, you know if you say that. And because their learning or acquisition of Jamaican doesn't happen in that sort of way, it's very easy for them to think, well, this thing now have no rules. The thing is that language rule now write down in a book. And people write them down in a book, but in a book them come from. And in fact, when them try write them down in a book, them tie up people, because sometimes I don't really study language work. They might try and make the language work how another language work like Latin or something. But so yes, I find it helps people. So I've seen children's eyes reach the back of them head when I show them that this thing has rules, it has structure. And them say, but why might they never tell we this before? And I can see it, that it empowers some people. Now that they know that what they speak is not disorderly, and it has rules, it has structure, it does something for them. So yes, I think we have to have that conversation. And in my capacity as coordinator for the Jamaican language unit, a part of our thrust, and we'll be beginning soon, is to do videos on YouTube that teach different aspects of the language so that people can see that it has rules. I wanted to add, and this has to do with going back to the point that Dutty made. The Prime Minister late last year, around this time, when we were doing the petition for making the Jamaican language official alongside English, and we have to keep on saying that for people. Professor Cooper knows that struggle. Have to keep on reminding people that it's alongside English. The Prime Minister made a statement that the institutionalization of the language is inevitable. And it was, let me say, a progressive statement, but it assumed that languages do things on their own. All right, yes, the language might become institutionalized. We're not exactly sure what he means by that, but a language cannot be institutionalized without the help of its speakers. It's the speakers who have to decide. So, for example, the English coming out of the Norman conquest had to decide that they were going to displace French as the language of administration and use English. That is the way we institutionalize a language. It is a scholar, Samuel Johnson, who had to decide that his language was good enough to be in a dictionary, and created one of the first comprehensive dictionaries of the English language. So institutionalization takes place when the speakers and the state support the language and make spaces for the language. And so we're asking the powers that be to not just talk, but to put their money where their mouth there, and give support to the institutionalization, because this is how Jamaica, and this is a view that I've had. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do the technology. We should give all our people the tools to create stuff, to create software, to advance in technology and technological development. But we also have to play to our strengths, which is our culture, and language is a big part of our culture. Give us the tools to sell ourselves where we are the strongest.
Could I come in here, Patrick? Yes. I just wanted to make a case for preservation. I know Joseph is using preservation in a particular way, but I think we have to acknowledge the fact that archiving is important. Preservation, I see not as something that is going to be locked in an archive and locked away, but preservation is about the process of understanding where the language is coming from. Dutty talked about Nanny more than once, and he probably knows that the Jamaican language is influenced by the Akan languages of Ghana, and Nanny came from Ghana. So in a way, yes, understanding that archive of culture helps us to now move forward. So I think we can think of preservation not so much as locking the language in the past, but preservation as a process of recognizing the history of the language, where it is coming from, and carrying that knowledge forward into the present and the future. Because one of our problems in our society really is that we don't have a strong tradition of archiving. And I think it's largely because we have this arrogance that we can keep on creating things. So if them come thief the culture, or if the culture lost, we can get it back and we can make something new. But you know, we need to develop and sustain what we already have, the institutions of preservation, not as the past for its sake, but the past as a way of understanding the present and guiding us into the future.
Yep, I love that point. Blaca?
Yes, I wanted to make the point that my proposition, my presenting the archive and the repertoire idea, which is borrowed from a book of the same name by Diana Taylor, Performing Cultural Memory in the Americas, the archive and the repertoire, is not to propose the either or binary. What is to say is to look at the archive and the repertoire, you know, to preserve and develop, to preserve and simultaneously use and popularize and make accessible what we have. So I'm certainly not banishing the archive. I'm saying, you know, maintain the archive and sustain the archive, but at the same time, value performance and value the repertoire, which gives more people access to the content than the archive would.
Archive, now I'm going to banish we in the repertoire. We have to keep on making that point.
And I think Carolyn did promise that she wanted to also demonstrate that she is part of the performance space. So I don't know if she's ready to do that for us. You're mute.
You never give me enough warning, man. Never get a little.
I never.
Soon come back. Soon come back with something.
Just dash it on you without warning.
You know, one of the things, Blaca, that I wanted to also ask you is just the whole thing. When we talk about public education, for example, and we talk about archiving and building a repertoire and preserving and carrying on and so on, but we find it very easy, as Dr. Berry said earlier, we find it very easy to see the value of the language and its appropriateness to public education, especially in times when we want people, when we want to basically connect with them emotional side and so on. And we use the language in public education, in the music, in campaigns, in those things. But when it comes to the formal side of things, as Joseph said, when it comes to the active process of institutionalizing, in other words, bringing it on the formal side, we have a challenge, right? And you would have been performing all over the world, all over the world. Dr. Berry created his videos, and he can use the analytics that he gets every day to see where people are. You are out there as well, long time performing. Joseph talked about the experiences with his professors across the world and so on. Do you think that there is some, I shouldn't set it up that way. What is it about others that cause them to bring this kind of value from the moment they come to it? This kind of value to the Jamaican language that we ourselves are still struggling with making that kind of connection. Do you understand what I'm saying? There's just something about them that they come to it. As you say, Joseph, when you go out there and you say you're Jamaican and you speak the way you speak, they're like, oh, I never knew you were Jamaican, but can you talk some Jamaican for us? And I would say, but I'm speaking Jamaican. And as you say, no, you're speaking Jamaican English. They want Jamaican, But what is it that make these others seem to just immediately connect and find the value in the language that we're not finding?
I think the answer is very simple, Patrick. The others have not been corrupted by the classist notions that many of us carry as chips on our shoulders, that make us embarrassed about speaking in a particular way. One of my biggest struggles even now with the academy, my biggest trouble with the learning institutions at the highest level in the Caribbean is the demand that your theories and your theses presented in the very pompous language of academia. I mean, would I like to present my dissertation in a way that the youth in Panicana can access it? I mean, I have to use this demand for the recitation of references and the multisyllabic words and so on bothers me. Not because I can't handle it, but because I think it creates a wall between me and some people. So, for example, my research work on Trenchtown has to be accessible to people from Trenchtown. If I'm gonna document a critical history of Trenchtown, and the man named 4th Street can't read it, because it's written for people by UWI. And that's part of the problem. There's the burden of a classist embarrassment about our mother tongue that people overseas don't have. They just like this thing, it sounds good. And they can see, I have a friend in Memphis, Tennessee, would call me when she's depressed. And say, Blaca, please, Blaca, let me just hear one more time how Jamaicans pronounce the word cucumber. Cucumber, oh God! And she prepared to just leap out of her skin to hear the word cucumber. And she, as an other, can appreciate the beauty of cucumber as opposed to cucumber. But we here have a challenge with that because we are so burdened with the century of colonialism that say we must be ashamed of ourselves. And that's the problem.
I don't know if anybody else wanted to chime in on that. I think Joseph was itching to go a moment just now.
No, no.
But Joseph and Prof. Cooper, how ready do you think is a place like UWI to accept somebody presenting a master's or a PhD dissertation in Jamaican?
All right.
Time,
So,
man, time.
time.
Joseph, you are
Yes?
still here. You
I
can.
want to hear them answer this.
Not as ready as we should be, because a lot of these things are governed by regulations and so on. I have been intending to put through a proposal for getting, so we might not necessarily get the whole thesis in Jamaican or in any of the vernacular languages of the Caribbean, but there is a practice in Western Europe that I would like to propose. And this is where, if the thesis is written in English, then you have to submit with it a translation into the national language. And I think that's a model we can follow. I have been concerned, Blaca, about that disconnect between academia and the public. There are many things going through my mind. One of them is to have people do a summary of their thesis in layman's terms and make that available to the public.
Hallelujah.
Or also, but a part of our problem, I'm going to throw it, and here Patrick is, I'm putting Patrick on the spot. I think it's a problem with how journalists are trained in Jamaica, because elsewhere it is journalists who carry out the task of interpreting academics. And so they will go into theses, pull out the necessary information, and then release that to the public. We tend not to have that in our space. Academics speak in a specific way. I don't think we have to do it. And I'm trying to overcome that. But at the same time, it is very hard to go from wrong 100 to wrong 20. And so we need those go-betweens, people who can help to interpret academia for the public. Again, the Jamaican Language Unit is planning a series to be done via YouTube, where we interpret a lot of the academic findings for the public.
Joseph, you're not putting me on the spot at all. I think it's an important statement that you have made. That is the reality. I remember when I was much more active in the classroom, defending myself as well, and supporting your point. When I was much more active in the lecturing space, I used to ask my students to go and find the material where we know it is, and interpret it for others to understand. I remember, Rushaine talked earlier about people just being locked in the headline, and I used to say, I don't want people in front of me who are only into the headline. I mean, the Planning Institute of Jamaica, for example, produces quarterly reports. Statin produces. They have all of these established organizations that produce quarterly reports on what's happening in the country, and yet we're not using it as part of our as advancing our responsibility to the public. So I think it's something important for us to do. I also support your idea, and I know that you're going to work on it, because as I said before, I've seen you working on some other course development projects. I know you're going to work on it, because that's an important way in which we can begin to also institutionalize the language, to make sure that when we submit
Yes.
whatever it is that our final papers or projects are, that we also submit it in the varying vernaculars of the Caribbean space. So, and we have just about 5 minutes left on this in this session. So what I'm going to do, I don't know if Carolyn wants to do hers first, but I'm just going to give all our panelists 30 seconds or so to kind of make a final comment, and then I will return us to our curator, You see, no, it's Joseph Transitioner because I'm not telling about the symbols and whatever and what it's supposed to mean. And now me looking at everything to make sure I read it the proper way. proper way. But I'm going to give everybody an opportunity to just make a final comment and then we wrap up. Carolyn, you want to kick off?
Yes, thanks. I just want to support Blaca about the point about the academy being more open to the indigenous language. And I must tell everybody that I gave my inaugural professorial lecture in Jamaican, because since I was such a big advocate of the language and I'm a patois doctor, I said, all right, this is my big occasion now. I gave the lecture in Jamaican, made history. Yes, I had some English in it when I was quoting appropriate text, but I think people began to see the power of the language. Well, one of my friends from Trinidad said, but Carolyn, that was not real Jamaican. In other words, he had no sense that Jamaican has different registers. You can have formal Jamaican, you can have informal Jamaican, but that whole lecture was structured in Jamaican. And interestingly enough, it was published by NYU. They have a journal, Hemispherica, and they were doing a special issue and they asked me for a contribution and I gave them the text in Jamaican. And before that, in the 80s, I did an academic paper in Jamaican on Lionheart Gal. And I don't have time for the whole story, but I was talking about my ideas to one of my friends, Velma Pollard. And when she heard it, she said, you know, Carolyn, what amuses me is that by the time you write the paper, I'd been talking to her about it in Jamaican. And I said, by the time you write it now, all of that will be gone. And I took it as a challenge to write the paper in Jamaican, but because I wasn't going to waste the bit that I had already written in English, there was a dramatic break in the text where I go from English to Jamaican, and that article has been much republished. So part of the problem is that the academics have to have the confidence to do the work and then know that it will find its audience. But if you are sitting waiting for people to give you permission to do what you know you should do, it will never happen. So we just have to, as academics, be courageous, pick up ourselves, and just do the work. So that's what I've tried to do.
And who is coming next?
Punch in a little fella. I want to say that as a man of faith, I also have a challenge with how the language is treated in spiritual spaces. You know, some people talk to you, you know, and them talk to you and them talking, I go pray now, and I'm starting putting that tongue, Almighty God, as if God can't talk patois too. So, you know, I think I really wanted to salute Prof. Cooper and doing that lecture in Jamaican completely. And I want to underline her point about the fact that we have different registers. You know, one thing that I love most about performers and people like Carolyn Cooper and Miss Kitty and even IT is that ability to code switch. You know, is to simultaneously access and inhabit the Jamaican English and the Jamaican language, the other Jamaican language. And I just want to reinforce at that point that as we push the language, and we know that it has register. When I'm on a lyrics of a woman, in the language of romance and the language of tracing, equally Jamaican, but different tone completely. The language of persuasion, when I'm gonna try to sell something and I'm getting into the colorful argument and so on. So we language have range and register and nuance and style and pattern. We need to just embrace it, embellish it, and simultaneously preserve, utilize it to make it grow. We language sweet, man. It's sweet, sweet, sweet. Sweet like when I'm fry up scallion. Trust me.
Thank you, Black. And Joe?
Okay, I think I'll just use my 30 seconds. Not so much to wrap up, but to point the way forward. The Jamaican Language Unit has a YouTube channel called Broadcast Jamaican. It has materials on it, so people reading in Jamaican. We did COVID news in Jamaican. Prof. Cooper has a program on it called Big Things Are Gone, which is on pause, but we're starting back very soon. And we'll be doing a weekly roundup of the news in Jamaican and several other stuff. So I'm going to ask people to just go over to the Broadcast Jamaican YouTube channel and subscribe. I'll post the link in the chat on YouTube. Thanks much.
And Rushaine, Dr. Berry.
Unmute. Yeah. All right. So yeah, my word, my sentence, my paragraph, my essay, my biblioteca. I guess we reach at the end. What I would say is that I love my country. I love my culture. I love speaking Patois. And what I'd want is to see a day where we really move past just the idea that Patois is to be confined in, for solely entertainment purposes, and to get to a point where, as you said, it can be, formalized and it's already formalized, but utilized as a part of the teaching and training process. That's going to be very fundamental. It's going to be very hard. But I feel as if this generation, in order for us to really elevate and to put some respect on the brand that is Jamaican Patois, we need to understand its usage in other respects. So that is basically it. I'm gonna plug myself too. But I'm gonna follow me if you don't follow me. Follow me already. Everything Dutty Berry Show. And I enjoyed this discussion. It was really, really, really nice and enlightening. And I hope that everybody who is watching at this moment, that you walk away learning something. And yeah, that's it.
Yes. I think we're all agreed that we have had an amazingly enlightening morning, empowering in many instances. And when I started, I said, these discussions are always relevant. They're necessary. And we must continue to do whatever it is we can to build on these conversations right across the society. So we have the Broadcast Jamaica, we have Dutty Berry, we have Carolyn in the papers, we have Blaca in the poems, and so on. And in other words, we have multiple platforms upon which we can build. So the one thing, therefore, that I would say that I would want us to take from this discussion going forward is that we must use this conversation as a platform upon which we push for greater appreciation of the Jamaican as a language, and to become active advocates and partners in the process to institutionalize the Jamaican. More and thank the whole of for the contribution, more and thank you for participating, and work good and made good duppy follow you.
Hold on.
Hold on, wait. Hi guys, I'm still here. I have not left the conversation. Firstly, I want to say thank you to our 200 plus viewers and those persons who have commented. We are sorry we ate up the question and answer section. But before I end, if you guys don't know, National Museum West is the sister museum to National Museum Jamaica, located in Kingston. We are in the West, and we are a division of the Institute of Jamaica. And this week we have two more really important and really good sessions coming up just to finish off Heritage Month. So the first one that we have is a lecture by Ms. Kelly Foster on behalf of National Museum Jamaica, and she will be talking about the beginnings of colonial heraldry, symbolism, slavery, and sugar. And she will be on this YouTube page, our YouTube page, National Museum Jamaica, on Thursday, October 29, 2020 at 10 a.m. So if you are interested in that talk, you can join us again on this Thursday, October 29th. And on Friday, our grand finale is the Institute of Jamaica Heritage Fest. It's entitled Treasures of the IOJ. Every object tells a story. And that will be on Friday, October 30th, 2020 from 10 to 11 a.m. And you can follow and find us on the IOJ YouTube page. And one of the initiatives, since we've been dealing with COVID, National Museum West, we've decided to do virtual outreach sessions. And it's not just for primary or secondary school students, but for anybody who is interested in Jamaican history and culture. The flyers on it's all across our social media. You can find it on National Museum West Montego Bay Facebook page, National Museum West Instagram page, and it explains all of the topics that we offer: resistance and slavery, emancipation, the people who came, we do all of those things. So if you are interested in any one of those sessions, if you homeschool, if you are retired, if you have friends, and you're looking for something to do at home, if you can't really get out, you can just give us a call at 1-876-971-9417, or send me an email at sbalfour@museums-ioj.org.jm. I just again want to big up all the people who commented. Somebody said, hold on, let me look for it. This was a timely discussion. That from Douglas Campbell said, timely discussion, love it. M.A. Malcolm said, excellent discussion. HH Free 695 said, excellent summation, Blaca. Baraka 360 said, this is incredible. It is an inferiority complex that stifles us. George Davis said, Lady Carolyn, love the head something. Somebody said, I agree with the philosophy. Teach them where they are at. I support the move as we speak Patois and formally learn English. Somebody, Doreen Patterson said, watching and listening from London, UK. Someone said, people gravitate to the sound of our language when we speak. So even if they don't understand what we are saying. So again, let me now do my final closing. This event has been quite a while in the making, and it has been even more stressful due to COVID. But I have to, there are no words to describe how much I can thank or want to thank our panelists and moderator who have taken time and who have responded to my numerous emails, numerous requests, numerous phone calls, and they've done it all with such grace and such ease. And there is my team, even though it's just a 2-woman army here at National Museum West. I have to say a very, very big thank you to my assistant, Ms. Zoe Sullivan. Without her, I don't know how I'd get through most days. I want to say thank you to the education officer at National Museum Jamaica, Ms. Alexis McDavid, who has been one of my major sounding boards, Ms. Jolene Longman and Ms. Okima Hamilton, both PR officers and at the Institute of Jamaica PR department, Ms. Monique Gilpin, curator at National Gallery West, Mr. Roel Cook. So for all of you who saw those lovely flyers, Mr. Roel Cook is the man behind that. We will also want to thank CVM at Sunrise and Nationwide FM. And again, thank you to Professor Carolyn Cooper, Mr. Owen Blakka Ellis, Dr. Joseph Farquharson, and Mr. Dutty Berry, and Dr. Prendergast. Thank you so much.
Tarifa, somebody's asking on YouTube where National Museum West is located.
We are located exactly in the heart of Montego Bay on Sam Sharp Square. You cannot miss us, not even if you tried. But unfortunately,
a quick last word, Ms. Balfour. I just went on the website, the YouTube channel for Broadcast Jamaican. It's only 111 subscribers. I subscribed a while ago. We should all subscribe and support the thing. Broadcast Jamaican. And if you subscribe and support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Blaca.
All right, so thanks so much for joining us. Well, good.